The pounding started at 6 in the morning. I opened the door. My grandmother ordered me to respect the woman who had slapped me in my father's kitchen just last night. I said nothing. I just placed the deed and the video file from the doorbell camera on the hall table. The elevator pinged, a flash of a silver cane at the threshold. My grandfather, the one they thought was long gone from the family, walked in. My name is Claire Connor. I am 32 years old. I am a former logistics officer for the United States Air Force, and I currently work as a risk analyst for Northlight Strategies. My job is to identify, assess, and mitigate exposure. I build firewalls. I analyze hostile actors. I run scenarios on asymmetrical threats. I am, by nature and by training, a planner. This apartment, my apartment, was the result of meticulous planning. It was not a gift. It was not a family asset. It was a fortress I had built for myself. Purchased 1 month ago with a Veterans Affairs loan that bore my signature and mine alone. It is a 1-bedroom corner unit looking out over the gray, cold waters of Casco Bay. I had spent the first few weeks just breathing the clean salt air, finding a silence I had not known since before I enlisted. It was my perimeter. The pounding on the door began at exactly 6 a.m. It was not a knock. It was an assault, a barrage of fists against solid wood, designed to shatter the morning quiet and instill panic. It was Darlene's signature. I did not move quickly. I moved deliberately. I looked through the peephole, the lens distorting the scene in the hallway into a grotesque tableau. My father, Thomas, stood back by the elevators, looking at his shoes. His shoulders slumped in a posture of permanent apology. He was the support vessel, the willing hostage. My grandmother, Edna, stood front and center, her back rigid, her hands clasped. She was the moral authority, the orchestrator. And Darlene, my stepmother, was the muscle. She was vibrating with a furious energy, her face blotchy. In her right hand, she was gripping a short piece of timber, maybe a 2x4, holding it loosely by her side. "Claire, open this door. I know you are in there." Edna's voice was sharp, cutting through the steel. "We are here to talk as a family." Family, the word they used as a crowbar. I checked the deadbolt. It was engaged. I checked the chain. It was secure. I walked to the hall closet, retrieved the items I had placed there last night, and returned to the door. I placed the small stack on the entryway table. I took a breath. I unhooked the chain and turned the deadbolt. I opened the door precisely 4 inches, the width of my boot, which I kept braced against the bottom. The cold ocean air of the hallway rushed in, mixing with the scent of Darlene's cloying perfume and Edna's heavy rose powder. "You are late," I said. My voice was flat. Edna's eyes narrowed. She despised that flatness. She lived for reaction. "Do not be insolent. This is not a game. You will show your stepmother respect." "Respect," I repeated. The word tasted like ash. I felt the dull throb on my left cheekbone, right below the eye, the bruise, a gift from Darlene in my father's kitchen less than 12 hours ago, was already a dark, mottled purple. They both stared at it. Edna ignored it. Darlene smiled. "You heard me," Edna snapped. "She is your mother, for all intents and purposes. She is the woman who raised you when your own left. You owe her. You owe this family. Now let us in. We are going to resolve this." "Resolve what, Edna?" "You know what?" Darlene spat, stepping forward. The piece of wood in her hand lifted an inch. "Marla, the apartment. You are going to help." "I am not," I said. I reached back to the entryway table, never taking my eyes off Darlene's weapon. I picked up the stack. "This," I said, holding up the first document so they could see the heading through the gap, "is the deed to this property. It is registered to Claire Connor. It lists no co-signers." I slid the next paper forward. "This is the final statement for my VA loan. It lists one borrower, Claire Connor." I held up the last item, a small, black USB flash drive. "And this is the complete video file from my doorbell camera last night, documenting Darlene's arrival, her demands, her assault, and her subsequent threats. It also includes the audio from her phone call in the parking lot where she told Marla she would break the door down if she had to. Edna actually took a step back, as if the small piece of plastic was radioactive. My father flinched, his eyes squeezing shut. "You little bitch," Darlene hissed. She lunged, slamming her shoulder against the door. The chain caught, straining the metal. "You recorded me?" "You are demanding the keys," I said, my voice unwavering. "To what you called the family house. I am clarifying that this is not a family house. This is my residence." "Semantics!" Edna cried, finding her voice again. "This is your family. Marla is in trouble. She needs collateral. You have this." She waved a hand dismissively at my door. "This luxury. Family helps family. You will sign the papers." "No," I said, "and you are not coming in. Furthermore, I have already emailed a no trespass order to the building management. It lists all three of you. If you do not leave this hallway in the next 60 seconds, I will call the Portland police and have you removed for harassment." The word police was the kill switch. Darlene looked ready to charge the door again, to break the chain, but Edna put a hand on her arm. Edna's entire strategy relied on the conflict staying in the family, where her rules of emotional blackmail and guilt held sway. The law was not her territory. My father, Thomas, finally spoke. His voice was thin, watery. "Claire, please, your attitude. This is not helping. Darlene is upset. We are all upset. Can you not just listen? We just need to talk. For Marla." I looked at my father. I held his gaze. He was a man drowning, and he was trying to use me as a flotation device. I said nothing. I let the silence hang in the air. This was the one thing they could not stand. My quiet. In my family. Silence was an accusation. It was a vacuum that they rushed to fill with their own justifications, their own noise. My father looked away, his gaze dropping to the industrial gray carpet of the hallway. Darlene's breath was coming in short, angry huffs. Edna saw she was losing control. The legal threats had outmaneuvered her. She shifted tactics. "You have always been cold," Edna said, her voice dropping, adopting the tone of mournful disappointment she used for manipulation. "Even as a child, this is not about paper. This is not about police. This is about tradition. This is about loyalty. You were raised to honor your family. You were raised to respect your elders. You come here. You get this place, on your own, and you think you can just cut us off? You think you are better than us? That is not how it works. You owe us." "The only thing I owe," I said, "is the mortgage, which is current." I saw Darlene's hand tighten on the piece of wood. She was calculating. I was calculating. 2. Threat assessment. Darlene is volatile. Edna is the strategist. Father is a non-entity. I slipped my hand into the pocket of my sweatpants. My fingers found the small, digital audio recorder I had placed there. I pressed the on button. A tiny, imperceptible click. The USB drive had the video. This would capture the audio of the coercion. I needed a complete record. "You think you are so smart," Darlene sneered, stepping up again. "Hiding behind your door, hiding behind your Air Force crap. You are just like your mother. Selfish, cold. You will give us what we need, or I will." The sound cut her off. Ping. The soft, metallic chime of the elevator arriving on the floor. It was an impossible sound in the middle of our standoff. We were the only unit on this end of the hallway. I was not expecting anyone. All three of them turned, startled, looking down the long, empty corridor toward the elevator bank. Their shared front, their unified assault on my door, was broken. The stainless steel doors slid open. A shadow emerged, then, the sharp, distinct tap of a cane on the floor. My father's face went white. Edna looked as if she had swallowed her tongue. Darlene just stared, confused, the piece of wood lowering in her hand. A man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored overcoat that was far too formal for 6 in the morning in Portland. He held a silver-headed cane, but he did not lean on it. He commanded it. He walked toward us. The tap of the cane on the floor was the only sound. Victor Hale, my maternal grandfather. The man Edna had told me was dead. The man my father had forbidden me to contact. The man who had, according to family lore, been erased and disowned 2 decades ago. He stopped about 10 feet away. His eyes, clear and sharp, took in the scene. He saw Darlene holding the wood. He saw Edna's furious posture. He saw my father's pathetic collapse. Then, his gaze met mine through the 4-inch gap in the door. He looked at me, and then his eyes focused on the dark purple bruise on my cheek. His expression did not change, but the air in the hallway became 10 degrees colder. He turned his head slowly, fixing his gaze on Edna. "Edna," he said. His voice was a low, resonant rumble that carried all the weight of the sea. "You look unwell, and you appear to be trespassing." The night before, it had all been a trap. Of course it was a trap. It started with my father's voice on the phone, a sound like wet paper, thin and easily torn. "Claire, honey, Darlene and I were hoping you might come over. For dinner. Just a quiet family dinner. Your grandmother will be here. Darlene wants to clear the air." Clear the air. In my family, that meant replacing the current, breathable oxygen with a toxic, pressurized gas. It was a summons, not an invitation. But it was a summons from my father, and I still had a residual, failing mechanism in my chest that responded to his weakness. So I went. I drove the 15 minutes from my clean, quiet, high-rise sanctuary in Portland across the bridge to the suffocating clutter of his rented house in South Portland. The house smelled like Darlene, a mix of synthetic vanilla potpourri, old frying oil, and a faint, sharp tang of anxiety. The reconciliation was, as predicted, an ambush. The atmosphere was thick before I even took off my coat. Edna was already enthroned in my father's recliner, the one good chair in the room, holding a glass of sherry. She regarded me over the rim as I entered. "Well, you came," she said, as if I had just successfully completed a difficult entrance exam. "Edna," I said, a neutral acknowledgement. "Grandmother, I am your grandmother. A little respect." Darlene was in the kitchen, making noise. It was her signature move, performing domestic labor with enough percussive force to signal her martyrdom. Pans slammed. Cabinets banged. My father, Thomas, hovered in the doorway between the living room and kitchen, a ghost trapped between 2 magnetic poles, belonging to neither. "Claire, glad you're here. Honey, Darlene's making her casserole." I smiled, a tight, bloodless expression. Darlene's casserole was a weapon system of congealed soup and sodium. We ate. The conversation was a minefield. Edna talked about the church bake sale. My father talked about the weather. Darlene said nothing, just pushed food around her plate with a fork that she held like a dagger. The tension was a physical thing, a tightening in my chest. I kept my posture straight, my hands visible on the table. I ate 2 bites of the casserole. I drank my water. The plates were cleared. My father, predictably, fled to the back porch to check the propane, leaving me with them. "Claire," Edna began, setting down her empty sherry glass. "We are family, and family means sharing. It means supporting one another. You understand that, do you not?" "I understand supporting," I said, my voice level. Darlene came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. Her face was flushed. "We need to talk about Marla." Ah, there it was. The objective of the mission, Marla, Darlene's daughter from her first marriage, was a black hole for money. Her latest failed venture was a boutique that sold driftwood painted with inspirational slogans. "What about Marla?" I asked. "She's in a bit of trouble," Darlene said, her voice attempting a casual tone and failing. "The store, it just needs a little boost, a little capital to get over the hump." "She needs a loan," Edna said, translating, "and her credit is difficult." "So," Darlene said, stepping closer, "we were thinking, you have that new apartment, all that equity." My blood went cold. Not cold exactly. It went still. My training took over. Threat identification. The apartment is not equity, I said. It is a VA loan. It is a debt. Semantics, Darlene snapped. It's an asset, and Marla needs to list an asset as collateral, just to get the loan from Clipper Bank. It's just a formality. We just need you to co-sign, or, better yet, just let her use the apartment on the paperwork. I looked at her. I looked at Edna. I looked toward the back porch, where my father was conspicuously absent. They had planned this. The dinner, the reconciliation, the casserole. It was all a staging ground for this. No, I said. The word landed in the room and detonated. What? Darlene's voice was a hiss. No, I will not be co-signing, and I will not be listing my home as collateral for Marla's debt. You selfish! Darlene's hand shot out and swept a water glass from the coffee table. It shattered against the faux wood paneling, spraying water in shards across the carpet. You have everything. You get that fancy military job, you get that fancy apartment, and you just look down on us. Darlene, Edna said, but it was a protest of form, not of substance. Claire, do not be difficult. Family is about sharing. When you have more, you give more. It is that simple. This is not sharing, I said, standing up. This is a non-secured, high-risk, unvetted business liability. The answer is no. Darlene moved. She was faster than I would have given her credit for. She crossed the 3 feet between us, her face a mask of rage, her breath hot and sour with wine. You ungrateful little bitch! Her hand came up. The sound of the slap was shockingly loud in the small, cluttered room. It was an open palm strike, hard enough to snap my head to the side, to send a jolt of white-hot pain from my cheekbone to my ear. The force of it made me stagger back a step. In the ringing silence that followed, I tasted copper. I lifted my fingers to my cheek. It was already throbbing. I looked past Darlene. My father was standing in the kitchen doorway. He had seen it. He had seen the entire thing. He was frozen. His mouth was open, his eyes wide, but he was pinned to the linoleum, a man impaled by his own cowardice. He did not move. He did not speak. Darlene, for heaven's sake, Edna said, her voice sharp with annoyance, not concern. Now look what you've done. Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene. The world snapped into sharp, cold focus. The adrenaline was a clean, icy flood. My training did not just kick in. It took over. My peripheral vision widened. I cataloged the room. Darlene, breathing heavily, fists clenched, 2 feet away. Edna, on the recliner, annoyed. My father, paralyzed in the doorway. 2 exits. My hands, which had balled into fists, unclenched. I would not hit her. I would not yell. Engaging a hostile, irrational actor on their home ground is a tactical error. You do not win by fighting their fight. You win by changing the battlefield. I took 1 deliberate, measured step backward, creating distance. You think you are so much better than me. Darlene stammered, emboldened by my lack of retaliation. My left hand went to my wrist. I was wearing my Garmin, my fitness watch. I had set a hotkey combination, a long press on the top button, a double tap on the bottom. A tiny vibration against my skin confirmed it. The high-sensitivity microphone was now active. The audio file was recording. I said nothing. You hit me, I finally stated, my voice devoid of emotion. It was a data point. You deserved it, she shrieked. Coming in here with your judgment. Your father and I, we have done everything for you. And this is how you repay us? By letting Marla fail? I am trying to save my daughter. By sacrificing me, I said. It's just paper, she screamed. And it is too late anyway. I already signed the papers for you. We just needed you to agree to be nice about it, to not make a fuss. I already signed them. I took care of it. There it was, the secondary explosion, the critical piece of intelligence. I already signed the papers for you. My mind flashed. A rapid-fire sequence of file retrievals, the power of attorney, the temporary, limited POA I had signed 5 years ago when I was deploying from Ramstein. It was supposed to be restricted to handling the sale of my old car. It was supposed to have expired, but I remembered Darlene offering to handle the filing with the notary. I remembered her picking up the extra copies. Threat confirmed. Identity fraud. Forgery. I did not react. I simply logged the information. "Claire, don't be this way," my father said. Finally finding his voice, it was a pathetic whine. It's just family helping family." I turned my head and looked at him. I let him see the red, swelling mark on my cheek. I let him see the absolute neutrality in my eyes. I watched him crumble, his gaze falling to the floor. He had made his choice. "I am leaving," I said. "You are not going anywhere!" Darlene lunged, grabbing my arm. I did not pull away. I simply stopped and looked down at her hand, her nails digging into my jacket. "You have assaulted me, Darlene. You have admitted to forgery. If you do not remove your hand, I will consider it a second assault, and I will defend myself, and I will press charges." My voice was not loud. It was as cold and flat as the surface of the bay in winter. She let go. Her hand recoiled as if she had touched ice. I turned, walked to the front hall, and picked up my keys. "You walk out that door. Claire, you are no longer part of this family," Edna called from the recliner. "Your choice," Darlene yelled. I opened the front door and walked out into the cold night air. I did not run. I walked to my car, my back straight, my movements economical. I got in. I locked the doors. I sat for 1 second, the engine off, in the silence. My hands were shaking, a fine, uncontrollable tremor. The adrenaline was hitting the downslope. I pulled my phone from my pocket. As I did, the screen lit up, a notification from my credit monitoring service. "Credit alert. An inquiry from Clipper Bank was made on your file on November 10th associated with the name Marla Connor." The pieces slammed together, the POA, the demand, the credit inquiry. They had not just planned to ask me, they had already done it. The assault was just the violent, stupid cover for a crime already in progress. I started the car. As I pulled away from the curb, my hand brushed the keychain. It was a simple, worn piece of aluminum, stamped with the insignia of my old Air Force logistics unit. Our unofficial motto was hammered into the metal: "Control what you can, document what you can't." I did not go home. I drove to a 24-hour coffee shop, one with bright fluorescent lights and free Wi-Fi. I went to the bathroom and took 3 high-resolution photos of my face, the swelling now distinct, the bruise darkening. I time-stamped them. I sat in a booth. I plugged my watch into my laptop. I downloaded the audio file, a 32-minute recording. I listened to the entire thing, the demand, the slap, Edna's voice, "Don't make a scene," and Darlene's fatal confession, "I already signed the papers for you." I opened a secure email account. I created a new email addressed to my work email and my personal email. Subject: Evidence chain. Connor residence incident. November 11th. I attached the 3 photos. I attached the audio file. I attached the screenshot of the credit alert. In the body of the email, I wrote an after-action report. Time of arrival, persons present, summary of conversation, nature of the assault, time of departure. My resolve hardened. This was no longer a family dispute. This was a hostile action. This was not a moment for emotional retaliation. That was their language, their battlefield. Mine was the law. Mine was the procedure. Mine was the evidence chain. They wanted to take my fortress. They had no idea I was an expert in siege warfare. I hit send. The first firewall was built. I returned to my apartment from the coffee shop at just before 3 a.m. The caffeine and the adrenaline from the assault had formed an unnerving cocktail, a volatile but focused energy. The throbbing in my cheek had subsided to a dull purple ache, a physical reminder of the stakes. My home, my sanctuary on the 9th floor overlooking the dark expanse of Casco Bay, was no longer a residence. It had become a command center. My actions were no longer driven by shock or anger. Those emotions were baggage, inefficient. I was driven now by procedure. I was a risk analyst, and my own life had just become the primary case file. I sat at my desk, the glow of the monitor illuminating the dark room. My first step was to build the timeline. In logistics, you cannot fix a broken supply chain until you map every single node. This was no different. I opened a new, encrypted spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, event. Column C, actor. Column D, verification. I started 6 months prior. April 3rd, 2024. Initial VA loan pre-approval. Verification. PDF from Navy Federal. Actor. Claire Connor. June 12th. Offer accepted. Harborview Condominiums. Unit 904. Verification. Signed offer sheet. Actor. Claire Connor. July 30th. Closing. Verification. Final deed. Signed and recorded by Cumberland County. HUD-1 statement. Final VA loan disbursement. Actor. Claire Connor. I stared at the lines. My name, my signature, my money, my benefit. There was not a single millimeter of ambiguity. The fortress was sound. Now the breach. Darlene's voice from the audio file. I already signed the papers for you. I minimized the spreadsheet and opened my digital archive, the one I had maintained since my first enlistment. I navigated to the folder labeled Ramstein, 5 years ago. There it was, temporary POA Connor, PDF. I had been deploying, and my old car was still in Maine. I signed a limited, temporary power of attorney for Darlene to handle the sale and the DMV paperwork. I opened the file, the terms, which I had written myself with help from the base legal office, were precise. The POA granted Darlene authority only in the matter of the 2011 Toyota, and the expiration clause was a cliff. This authority shall terminate automatically and absolutely on December 31st, 2019. It was expired, worthless. She could not have used it. Unless... My mind raced. A forgery? Or something simpler, more insidious? I went to my archived email. I searched Darlene's email address with the keyword notary. A result. November 8th, 2019, 4 days after I signed the POA. Subject. Got the papers. Body. Hi, honey. Just picked up the copies from the notary. They gave me a stack of extra blank signature pages just in case for the tax forms. So convenient. Hope Germany isn't too cold. Love, Darlene. My blood ran cold. Blank signature pages. Notarized. She had been holding notarized copies of my signature, attached to nothing, for 5 years. She had a weapon, waiting for a war. The credit alert from Clipper Bank proved she had finally fired it. My first priority was containment. I opened 3 new browser tabs: Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. The alert had come from TransUnion. I started there. I filed a detailed fraud alert. I named Marla Connor as the applicant. I named Darlene Connor as the likely perpetrator of the fraud, citing the expired POA. Then, I executed the freeze. One by one, I entered my information. Activate credit freeze. Confirmed. Activate credit freeze. Confirmed. Activate credit freeze. Confirmed. The steel doors slammed shut. I had frozen my credit profile solid. They could knock. They could forge. They could plead. The vaults were sealed. No new accounts. No new loans. No new inquiries would pass. Next, the existing assets. If they were at Clipper Bank, where else were they? My VA portal, my benefits, my loan. I logged in. My access was secured with 2-factor authentication. I went straight to the account settings, to the access log. My heart hammered. Login. November 10th, 8:15 p.m. Successful. Login. November 11th, 1:30 a.m. Successful. The first login was while I was at their dinner, trapped at the table. The second was while I was at the coffee shop, building my evidence file. But the IP address? It was not mine. It was not my apartment's IP. It was not my phone's. I ran a trace. The IP resolved to a public branch library, Old Orchard Beach. Old Orchard Beach, the place Edna and Darlene went on Tuesdays for the farmers market. The place they used the public computers because Edna did not trust the internet in her home. They had my password. They were in my VA account. This escalated the situation from a family dispute to a federal crime. This was wire fraud and identity theft against a veteran. I changed my password, changed the security questions, and enabled biometric-only access. I took screenshots of the fraudulent IP addresses and their time of entry. I added them to the growing evidence file. It was now 4:30 in the morning. I called the 24-hour emergency number for my building's management company. A sleepy security guard answered. "Security, this is Evan." "Evan, this is Claire Connor. Unit 904. I have an emergency. I need you to check the hallway camera footage for my floor." "Ma'am, it's 4:30 in the morning." "I understand. I was physically assaulted tonight by a family member. That family member is on my initial visitor list, but I now believe they may have attempted to unlawfully enter my apartment after I left. I need you to check the footage from approximately 11:30 p.m. last night." The word assault woke him up. "Yes, ma'am. One moment." I heard typing. A long pause. "Okay. Yeah. Ms. Connor. I see it. At 11:37 p.m., a woman. Darlene Connor?" "That is correct. She was at your door. She used a key, but the deadbolt was thrown. Then she pounded on the door for about 2 minutes straight. Then she left." "I need a copy of that footage. Evan, I am filing a protection from abuse order at 9 a.m. Please send a secure link to that file to my email and copy the head of building management." "You got it. Ms. Connor, sending it now." I hung up. More evidence. Attempted illegal entry. Harassment. I opened a new tab. Maine Veterans Legal Network. It was a pro bono service I had donated to, specializing in exactly this. I filled out their emergency online intake form. Status: veteran. Nature of incident: physical assault by stepmother. Identity: theft, financial fraud by stepmother, grandmother, stepsister. Suspected wire fraud, VA benefits portal. Request: emergency assistance. I need to file a PFA order this morning. I need an immediate cease and desist letter. I have a complete evidence packet. I need consultation on criminal charges. I hit submit. My request would be at the top of their triage list by the time their office opened. One last move. The most important one. My apartment. The deed was in my name. Claire Connor. It was a clean target. I needed to move it. I needed to make it invisible. I went to the Maine Secretary of State website. File for a new domestic LLC. It was an automated, instant process. Name of entity. I paused. I looked out the window. The first light was hitting the water, illuminating the buoys that marked the safe channel. Blue Buoy LLC. Purpose: real estate holding. Registered agent: Claire Connor. Sole member, some manager, Claire Connor, 100%. I paid the $175 fee. The confirmation popped up. Congratulations. Blue Buoy LLC is now a legally registered entity in the state of Maine. I downloaded a standard quitclaim deed. I filled in the blanks. I, Claire Connor, an individual, do hereby transfer and quitclaim all interest in the property located at my address to Blue Buoy LLC, a Maine limited liability company. At 9 a.m., when the bank opened, I would get this notarized. By 10 a.m., it would be filed with the Cumberland County Registry of Deeds. By lunchtime, I would no longer personally own this apartment. My company would, a sterile, faceless legal entity that Darlene, Edna, and Marla had no standing to sue, no leverage to claim, and no family connection to guilt. The printer in my office began to hum, spitting out page after page. The timeline, the expired POA, the email about the blank forms, the credit freeze confirmations, the screenshots of the IP trace from Old Orchard Beach, the articles of incorporation for Blue Buoy LLC, the quitclaim deed, ready for a notary stamp. I collated them. I slid them into a heavy manila envelope. On the front, I wrote, Evidence, Connor V. Connor. It was 5:50 a.m. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was now a real presence, casting a cold, clean light across the harbor. My apartment was silent. The only sound was the distant tolling of the buoys. For the first time since I signed the lease, the air inside did not just smell new, it smelled clean. It smelled of the ocean, of salt, and of a clearly defined, legally defensible perimeter. It smelled like my territory. I took a deep breath. And then, right on schedule, the pounding on my door began. 6 a.m. After Victor Hale's intervention in the hallway, the immediate siege was broken. He had left me with a curt nod and a simple statement. My attorneys are in Portland. You will hear from them by noon. He had not asked for details. He had simply observed the scene, assessed the threat, and aligned his resources. It was the most professional, and frankly, the most familial thing I had ever witnessed. I closed and deadbolted my door. The silence that followed was profound. My father, Edna, and Darlene had dispersed, not with apologies, but with the scattered haste of a routed enemy. I did not feel triumphant. I felt cold. I was an analyst, and my apartment, which I had just secured with a legal fortress called Blue Boy LLC, was now my observation post. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the campaign had just begun. I spent the next hour executing the rest of my plan. I went to my bank, had the quitclaim deed notarized, and filed it myself at the Cumberland County Registry of Deeds. By 10:30 in the morning, Claire Connor, the individual, no longer owned a visible, desirable asset. Blue Boy LLC, my invisible corporate shield, did. With the legal perimeter secured, my mind turned to the why, not the superficial why, Marla's debt. That was just the catalyst. I needed to understand the weapon system they had been using against me for my entire life, the one I had only just now begun to dismantle. The primary weapon, Edna's preferred armament, was respect. Respect your elders. Show your mother respect. Have some respect for this family. It was the slogan of our house. It was the moral framework Edna had installed, and it was a brilliant piece of psychological warfare. Respect, in Edna's lexicon, did not mean to treat with consideration and esteem. It meant to obey without question. It meant to surrender your boundaries. It meant that her age, her status as matriarch, granted her unilateral access to my time, my resources, and my autonomy. To disagree with Edna was not a difference of opinion. It was a failure of character. To set a boundary was not an act of self-preservation. It was an act of insolence. And Darlene was the enforcer of this system. When my biological mother left, a subject my father and Edna spoke of only in hushed, damning tones of abandonment, Darlene had arrived. She had stepped into the vacuum, not with kindness, but with an invoice. She had saved my father from despair. She had stepped up to raise me, a child who was not hers, and for this she was owed. She carried an invisible, itemized bill, an emotional invoice that she presented at every opportunity. Any disagreement, any attempt to live my own life, was met with the ultimate accusation, ungrateful. After all I have done for you, do you know how hard it was for me, taking you in? I gave up my best years. It was a debt that could never be repaid, and that was the point. It was not a debt, it was a leash. Marla's failing driftwood and potpourri shop on Commercial Street was just the latest bill to come due. Darlene saw my apartment, the one I earned with my service and my salary, not as my home. She saw it as an untapped resource, a line item on her side of the ledger. She saw it as a life raft for Marla, and she was perfectly willing to drown me to get it. My respect was the currency they demanded. My gratitude was the key to my bank account. They had twisted these virtues into tools of extraction. Sitting there, watching a ferry cut a white scar across the gray bay, I had the single most important realization of my life. They did not want reconciliation. They did not want family. They wanted ownership. They wanted to own my success to cover their failures. They wanted to own my assets to pay for their liabilities. They wanted to own my future to justify their past. And in that cold, clean, analytical moment, I took a vow. I would no longer participate in their narrative. I would no longer be the ungrateful daughter or the insolent granddaughter. I was an analyst, and from this moment forward, every word they spoke, every text they sent, every frantic voicemail they left was not an emotional attack. It was data. It was evidence. Their every manipulative utterance would be logged, time-stamped, and filed. I would build a new story, not from their twisted definitions of respect and family, but from the cold, hard, verifiable facts. My body, however, was still processing the physical part of the conflict, the slap, the memory of my father watching, paralyzed. My cheek throbbed. I felt a phantom echo of Darlene's hand. The violation of my personal space. I had stepped back. I had recorded. I had not engaged. But the feeling of being a target, of being physically struck and choosing not to retaliate, left a residue. It was a feeling of passivity I did not like. I had controlled the legal response, but I had not controlled the physical one. I went online. I found a self-defense class, a Krav Maga orientation, at a gym downtown. It was for adults, focused on threat neutralization and disengagement. I signed up for the introductory session that evening. I needed to reclaim my physical agency, to recalibrate my own body as a fortress. Just as I had done with my apartment, I needed to remind myself that my body was not a passive object to be disrespected. It was a tool to be defended. The rest of the day was spent in action. I spoke with the lead attorney from the Maine Veterans Legal Network. She was sharp, focused, and immediately understood the distinction between a family spat and criminal fraud. She confirmed the PFA order was being filed. She confirmed the cease and desist letters were being sent via certified mail to Darlene, Edna, and my father. She confirmed that a separate, detailed report was being filed with the VA's Office of Inspector General regarding the fraudulent access of my benefits portal. By 5 p.m., the legal storm I had seeded was beginning to gather. The wind was shifting. I was shutting down my laptop when a new email appeared in my inbox. It was not from the lawyers. It was from a new, encrypted address I did not recognize. The sender was simply S. The subject line was one word: Clipper Bank. My hands stilled on the keyboard. The body of the email was short, just 2 lines. I heard what they are doing. I worked for Marla. You are right to be worried, but you are looking at the wrong apartment. Don't trust Edna about the family fund. I read it 3 times. You are looking at the wrong apartment. What did that mean? Don't trust Edna about the family fund. I had never even heard of a family fund. The email was a new data point, a vector from an unknown source. It could be a trap. It could be Darlene or Marla trying to fish me, to see what I knew. But it felt different. It was precise. It named the bank. It named Edna. It hinted at a deeper, more organized financial structure. This was not Darlene's chaotic, violent lashing out. This was something else. I replied, "Who is this? How do I know I can trust you?" The reply came back in less than a minute. I don't trust you either. But I hate what they did to me, and I hate what they are doing to you. I have the receipts. Literally. Meet me. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. The Standard Baking Co. on Commercial Street. Come alone, or don't. Your choice. Signed, S. I looked at the message. The Standard Baking Co. Public. Crowded. Good line of sight. This S was not an amateur. This S understood operational security. I made a decision. I had spent my life inside a narrative written by Edna and Darlene. Now, my own narrative was taking shape, and it was clear I did not have all the intelligence. To win this, I needed to know the entire map. I was scheduled for a follow-up with my legal team tomorrow morning. I moved it to the afternoon. I would take the meeting. I stepped back from the desk. My decision made. I had spent the day building my defenses. Now, it was time to gather the intelligence I needed to go on the offensive. Outside, the wind coming off the bay had picked up, carrying the first cold spatters of rain against my window. The legal storm was no longer rising. It was here. The standard baking karu, on Commercial Street at 8 a.m., is a controlled chaos of caffeine and sugar. The air is thick with the smell of warm bread, roasted coffee, and the salty tang of the harbor just across the street. It is a public place, but loud, offering a blanket of anonymity, a good choice. I arrived at 7:45, bought a black coffee I did not intend to drink, and took the worst table, a small two-top in the corner, back to the wall, with a clear view of the entrance and the rainy street beyond. I was an analyst, and this was a data collection mission. I observed. At 8:02, she walked in. I knew her instantly from the vague descriptions Marla used to use, always laced with condescension. My little bookkeeper, this was S. She was small, in her late 40s, wearing a nondescript rain jacket and a knit hat pulled down low. She looked less like a corporate accountant and more like someone who worked on the docks. Her eyes scanned the room, jittery, looking for someone who did not belong, and landed on me. She recognized me from local news photos Darlene had insisted on placing in the paper years ago. She hesitated, then walked to my table. "Claire Connor?" she asked, her voice low. "Sylvie Hart," I stated. It was not a question. She froze. "How did you—" "Marla's boutique. You were the accountant. Filed her LLC docs in 2020. You resigned 3 months ago. You now work freelance. You were easy to find." She visibly relaxed, even letting out a small, bitter laugh. She sat down, pulling her own coffee onto the table. "Good, good. You did your homework. That makes this easier. I am not crazy. I do not like thieves." "I am listening," I said. Sylvie did not waste time. She reached into her bag and slid a small, gray USB drive across the table. It was identical to the one I had placed on my own hall table less than 36 hours ago. "This is not everything," Sylvie said, her voice barely above the din of the cafe. "But it is the map. I was Marla's accountant for 3 years. She is sloppy, arrogant, but she is not the one driving the train. Edna is." This confirmed my suspicion. Darlene was the muscle, but Edna was the strategist. "What is the Edna Family Fund?" I asked, quoting her email. "It is a phantom. It is a simple trust Edna set up 10, maybe 15 years ago, supposedly for family emergencies and charitable giving. Marla's boutique, however, was in a death spiral for the last 18 months. I kept telling her she had to liquidate. Then, suddenly, cash deposits, 10,000 here, 5,000 there, always just under the reporting threshold." "From where?" "That is the thing. It was a circle. Money would go from Marla's personal account into the Edna Family Fund. Then, days later, an investment would come from the fund back into the boutique. But the numbers never matched. More was going in than was coming out. It was a washer. She was cleaning her own failed business money." "That makes no sense," I said. "Why wash your own money?" "You are not asking the right question," Sylvie said, tapping the USB drive. "You should be asking, whose money was it, and why was it in Marla's personal account to begin with?" I pulled the statements before I quit. It is all on there, transfers between Marla and the fund. But there is something else. She leaned in. "I am the one who flagged your name at Clipper Bank." My focus sharpened. "You?" "I still do freelance processing for them. I saw the application, Marla's name, co-signed by you, using a property description I did not recognize, the signature page. It looked legitimate, notarized, but the date on the notary stamp was wrong. It was from 2019. The loan officer was going to push it through. I am the one who flagged it for a signature mismatch. I told them I had a personal conflict and to have a senior manager review it. That is why it got flagged on your credit. I was trying to warn you without, you know." "You saved me," I said, the words feeling heavy and inadequate. I saved myself, Sylvie said, her eyes dark. She still owes me my last 2 invoices. Now, on that drive, check the file named Correspondence. It is an email chain I was accidentally copied on, from Edna's personal account. She pushed the drive toward me. That is it. I am done. I never want to see them again. Do not tell them it was me. They are... Darlene is violent, and Edna is worse. She is smart. I will not, I said. I am a source protector by trade. You will be anonymous. You were never here. Sylvie nodded, stood up, and blended into the crowd waiting for pastries. She was gone in 30 seconds. I sat for a moment. The USB drive felt heavy in my hand. I paid for the coffees and left. Back in my apartment, I did not plug the drive directly into my laptop. I was not an amateur. I used a sandboxed, air-gapped machine I kept for analysis, a burner laptop that never touched my personal network. The drive was clean, no malware, just files. Sylvie was meticulous. Spreadsheets, PDFs, bank statements. I looked at the correspondence file first. It was an email from Edna to Darlene, sent 2 weeks ago. Subject: The Claire Problem. Darlene: Your approach is too aggressive. Marla needs the collateral, and we will get it, but you will not get it by force. This one is like her mother, stubborn. We must bring her back into the fold first. I will arrange a dinner. We will use the tradition angle. I will talk about respect. You will talk about family. We soften her. We remind her of her obligation. Once she is emotionally aligned, then you can present the formality of the paperwork. It was the entire script for the ambush dinner. It was a calculated plan to emotionally manipulate me before Darlene, in her rage, had simply skipped to the assault. I closed the file, my hands steady. The betrayal was not emotional. It was tactical. They had premeditated the entire psychological operation. I turned to the spreadsheets. Sylvie was right. A complex, circular flow of money, Marla, Edna, the fund. It was a shell game. And then I saw the other file, POA Scan Draft, PDF. It was a PDF of the power of attorney I had signed in 2019. My signature was clear at the bottom, but it was not the PDF I had in my records. The wording in the first paragraph, it was different, broader. It included language about property management and financial decisions. I looked at the metadata. The PDF creation date was 5 years ago, but the last modified date was 3 weeks ago. The file had been altered. They had taken the scanned image of my original, notarized signature page and digitally attached it to a new, fraudulent document with expanded powers. The metadata showed the last modified user, Econer. The file path showed where it was saved. See users Edna Desktop Taxes 2024 Final Docs. The IP address from the VA portal, the metadata on the forged POA, it all pointed to one machine, one desk, one person, Edna. I needed to confirm the digital fingerprint. I called Ethan Cole. Ethan and I had gone through basic training together. A lifetime ago. He had been a signals intelligence guy. I was logistics. He was now a senior data security consultant in Austin. He owed me. Claire Connor. His voice boomed over the secure line. To what do I owe the honor? Did you finally break the federal government? Not yet, I said. I have a technical question. I have a PDF. I suspect it is a forgery. Specifically a document where a signature page was appended to a modified text body. What is the fastest way to confirm? You want me to look at it? I want you to tell me how to look at it, I said. I am running it in a sandbox. Right, okay. Forget the simple metadata. They can fake that. You need to look at the XMP data. It is the core file history. Most amateurs do not know how to scrub it. It will show you the exact software used to create the original, the software used to modify it, and the exact timestamps of each interaction. If they use something like Adobe Acrobat to swap the pages, the XMP log will light up like a Christmas tree. Send it to me. I will have the full lineage in 5 minutes. I encrypted the file and sent it. While I waited, my phone buzzed. A notification from my legal team at the Veterans Network. Ms. Connor, we have a complication. Clipper Bank has confirmed a loan application was filed in your name. It was flagged and denied, per your credit freeze. However, our server just received a bounce back from the cease and desist letter we sent to Darlene Connor. A bounce back? She refused service. The process server was verbally threatened and left. She is now posting about the incident on social media. I am looking at it now. She is claiming you are unstable and harassing your family with false accusations and making it all up. I closed my eyes. Of course, this was Darlene's move. When the law worked against her, she went to the court of public opinion, where she could be the victim. Do not respond, Ms. Connor, the lawyer said, her voice firm. Do not engage. Let her. Every post is a violation of the harassment statute. She is making our case for us. Just be aware of it. I understand, I said. Let her post. She is self-incriminating. While you are on the line, I have another piece of evidence. I need you to send a spoliation letter, immediately. A what? A letter demanding the preservation of evidence. Specifically, a desktop computer located at Edna Connor's residence. I have digital proof it was used in the commission of wire fraud and forgery. I want them legally notified that if that machine is tampered with, wiped, or accidentally broken, we will move for sanctions. There was a pause. Ms. Connor, you are very good at this. I will draft it now. My other line beeped. It was Ethan. Okay, he said, and the jovial tone was gone. Claire, this is not an amateur job. This is a felony. The original file was a one-page scan. That scan was then imported into Adobe Acrobat Pro on October 29th. A new 3-page text document was created. The signature page from the original scan was digitally detached and appended to the new document. The creation metadata was then manually backdated to 2019. It is a competent forgery, but they did not scrub the XMP. And the user? Registered user, E. Connor. The machine ID is Edna Dell Desktop. I ran the IP address associated with the last save. It matches the public IP address of a residence in Old Orchard Beach. You want the address? I already have it, I said, looking at the file I had started building on Edna. Thank you, Ethan. Claire, what the hell is going on? Who are these people? Family, I said, and hung up. The final piece of data arrived just as the sun began to set. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. This is your neighbor, Unit 902. We met in the elevator. I am so sorry to bother you, but I saw this last night and it seemed wrong. My security camera faces the hallway. Attached was a video file. I pressed play. The timestamp was 2:30 a.m., just after I had left for the coffee shop, before my 6 a.m. confrontation. The video showed a man, a locksmith, standing at my door. With him was Darlene. He was working on my lock. He was clearly attempting to drill it out. He worked for a minute, then stopped, looked at Darlene, and shook his head. He packed his tools. He looked angry. Darlene gesticulated wildly. He pointed down the hall at the elevator, then left. Darlene remained, stared at my door, and then gave it a vicious, violent kick before storming off. He had failed to breach the high-security deadbolt. A failed, illegal attempt at entry, caught on video. I saved the file. I forwarded it to my lawyer with one line. Add this to the PFA and send a copy to the locksmith's bonding company. I stood up and walked to my desk. I took the manila envelope labeled evidence and opened it. I added the USB from Sylvie. I added Ethan's XMP analysis. I added the neighbor's video file. The door had not just been opened. The data warehouse was now completely compromised. The data was flowing, and it was all flowing my way. My lawyer from the main Veterans Legal Network, Ms. Allen, was former JAG. She operated without emotion, strictly by the statute. Ms. Connor? She said, her voice a sharp, clean line over the phone. The judge has reviewed the evidence packet. the neighbor's video of the locksmith, the fraudulent IP logs from the VA portal, and your photos of the assault. The emergency protection from abuse order is granted, effective immediately. They will be served by the Sheriff's Department by 5 p.m. The cease and desist, I said, my voice flat. It needs to cover more than just physical contact. Darlene is already posting on social media. Way ahead of you, Ms. Allen replied. I am sending 3 separate, specialized letters, one to Darlene, one to Edna, and one to Marla. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. They will cover harassment, defamation, slander, and libel. Her Facebook posts about you being unstable and making up lies are actionable. We have put them on formal notice. Every text, every call, every post they make from this moment forward is not just evidence. It is a direct violation of the notice. They are building our case for us. And the spoliation letter, I asked? Sent to Edna's address. It legally notifies her that her Edna Dell desktop is considered evidence in a potential criminal proceeding. If she formats the hard drive, or if it accidentally falls down the stairs, it creates a legal presumption that the evidence she destroyed was unfavorable to her. She is pinned. The legal layer was set. Now, the financial. I called Navy Federal. I was routed, as expected, to the mortgage department. Navy Federal Credit Union. This is Marcus. How can I help? My name is Claire Connor, I said. I am calling about my VA mortgage. Account number. I read the full number from my statement. I am requesting an immediate 60-day protective escrow on all payments. There was a pause. A protective escrow, ma'am? I see your account is current. Escrows are typically for handling disputes in taxes or insurance. I am aware, I said. I am activating it as a security measure. I am currently the subject of targeted financial fraud by family members who are attempting to establish a claim or leverage over my property. I will continue to make the full payments into the escrow account. I want the funds held, unapplied, by the bank for 60 days. This will prevent any third party, such as Darlene or Edna Connor, from attempting to make a partial payment on my behalf in an effort to claim tenancy rights or equitable interest. The silence on the line was longer this time. Ma'am, Marcus said finally, his tone shifting from customer service to genuine curiosity. I have been in this department for 10 years, and no one has ever asked me to do that. That is, incredibly specific and smart. Let me check the VA-backed loan regulations for active fraud alerts. Yes, okay. Under Section 36. Special circumstances. We can establish a temporary restricted escrow. It will do exactly what you said. It will accept your payment but will block any other funds and prevent payoff calculations. It protects you. I can execute this immediately. Please do, I said. The second wall went up. They could not use help as a weapon of infiltration. Next, the physical perimeter, my apartment building. I emailed Evan, the head of security, the man who had provided the first crucial video. Evan. This email is formal notice. As of 10 a.m. this morning, the ownership of Unit 904 has been legally transferred from Claire Connor, individual, to Blue Boy LLC. I am the sole managing member of this LLC. From this moment, all previous guest lists and permissions are void. No individual is to be granted access to the 9th floor for my unit without prior written authorization on official Blue Boy LLC letterhead. Specifically, Darlene Connor, Edna Connor, Thomas Connor, and Marla Connor are not to be permitted in the elevator. They are not to be announced. If they appear on the property, you are to call the Portland Police Department immediately and cite the Protection from Abuse order, which I am attaching to this email. Any locksmith or contractor who arrives without my new, specific authorization is to be considered a hostile agent and denied entry. Thank you for your professionalism. Claire Connor, Managing Member, Blue Boy LLC. His response was immediate. Understood. Ms. Connor, clear as a bell, no letterhead, no access. We will enforce the trespass order. The physical walls were secure. Now the data. The evidence packet was my entire arsenal. It was digital, and therefore vulnerable. I executed the 3-2-1 backup protocol. It was doctrine. 3 copies of the data, on 2 different media types, with 1 copy off-site. First, I encrypted the entire evidence folder. The videos, Sylvie's USB data, Ethan's XMP analysis, the audio file of the assault. I uploaded this encrypted container to a secure cloud server based in Switzerland, protected by privacy laws I trusted. That was copy 1, on the cloud. Second, I copied the same encrypted container to a brand new, high-capacity solid-state drive. I walked to the small, fireproof safe hidden in my closet, entered the combination, and placed the drive inside. That was copy 2, on a local hard drive. Third, I copied the container onto a military-grade, waterproof, encrypted USB flash drive, the kind I used to carry in the field. I slid this into an anti-static bag. This was copy 3, the off-site copy. I would take it to a new safety deposit box at a different bank in the morning. Cloud, safe, off-site, my arsenal was decentralized and secure. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Alerts are live. I'm monitoring all public social media for your name, Darlene's, Edna's, and Clipper Bank. She's active. He forwarded a screenshot of Darlene's public Facebook page. It was a long, rambling, emotionally incoherent post, filled with grammatical errors and random capital letters. Some people forget where they came from. They get a fancy apartment and think they are better than the family who raised them. They make up horrible lies about their loving stepmother who took them in. Pray for my daughter Claire. She is very sick and confused and is being manipulated by evil people. She needs prayers, not hate. It was libelous, it was pathetic, and it was bait. Darlene wanted me to respond. She wanted a fight in the mud. She wanted me to log on and shout, "You are lying! You hit me! You forged my signature!" She wanted to drag me from my fortress of law and facts down into her chaotic, emotional trench, a battlefield where she held every advantage. I would not give her the satisfaction. My strategy was absolute silence. My lawyer spoke for me. The court filings spoke for me. The truth, when it was finally revealed, would not be in a Facebook comment thread. It would be in a public legal judgment. Cold and permanent. I put my phone down. I did not reply. I did not block her. I let her commit libel. And in doing so, I let her build my case. 2 weak points remained, my father and Edna. My father was a coward, but he was also the only witness to the assault who was not a perpetrator. He was a non-hostile. For now, I took a piece of heavy plain cardstock. I wrote by hand, my cleanest, most neutral script. Dad, I am willing to meet you. Alone. No Darlene, no Edna. Just you and me. You know what you saw. You know what Darlene admitted to. You have my number. Your choice. I sealed it in a plain envelope. I would mail it to his office, not the house. It was not an offer of forgiveness. It was a strategic opening, a chance for him to defect. As I was placing the stamp, my phone rang. The caller ID was Edna Connor. My stomach muscles instantly, involuntarily, clenched. This was the main assault, the strategist herself. I let it ring 3 times. I centered myself. I activated the call recording app on my phone. I took a breath. I answered. Hello, Edna? Claire? Claire, this has gone far enough. Her voice was not the frail, disappointed grandmother. It was the sharp, boardroom voice, the one I had heard her use on bankers. This is absurd. What specifically is absurd, Edna? This letter, from a lawyer, telling me I am prohibited from contacting my own granddaughter, a cease and desist, and a letter about my personal computer? What is this nonsense? You are harassing me. The letters are a legal formality, I said, my voice cold. They are a direct response to documented actions, the assault, the attempted fraud, the illegal access of my VA files. Actions. What actions? A family discussion? Darlene was upset. You are tearing this family apart. Claire, All because of a little paperwork. After everything we have done for you, you have a duty. My duty is to the law. Your duty is to me, she snapped. Your duty is to respect. I am your grandmother. I demand you call off these lawyers. You will come to the house. You will apologize to Darlene for this mess, and we will sort out this loan for Marla like a proper family. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it, the absolute confidence in her own narrative, even after being caught. She was doubling down, demanding I apologize for being assaulted. There will be no meeting, Edna. There will be no apology, and there will be no loan. You listen to me, young lady. I will not be spoken to this. No, Edna, I said, and my voice cut through hers, sharp as glass. You listen to me. You are right. This is about respect. I respect the law. I respect the statutes regarding forgery. I respect the criminal penalties for identity theft and wire fraud. And I respect the protection from abuse order that a judge signed at noon today. If you contact me again, by phone or any other means, you will be in violation of a court order. There was a sound on the other end, a sharp, shocked intake of breath, a hiss. You filed against me? I filed against everyone involved in the threat, I said. This conversation is over. I hung up. My hands were perfectly steady. The old Claire would have been shaking, crying, or yelling, defending herself, falling back into the trap of respect. But the analyst, the logistician, just felt quiet. My phone buzzed one last time. It was an email from Ms. Allen. Subject: hearing date. The temporary PFA is granted and served. The hearing for the permanent order is set. Tuesday, 9 a.m., Portland District Court. Be ready. I closed the email. I looked around my apartment. The legal, financial, physical, and data perimeters were set. The enemy was in disarray, lashing out on public forums, failing to grasp that the battlefield had changed. I took a deep breath. It was the first one that did not feel tight. This was the peace of having a system. This was the calm, not of the storm passing, but of knowing, with absolute certainty, that your walls would hold. The dockside deli at noon is a loud, bright, neutral territory. It smells of frying oil, old wood, and the low-tide brine of the harbor. The floor is covered in sawdust, and the tables are scarred with the history of 1,000 hurried lunches. This is where you meet someone when you cannot meet them at a home, because you no longer have one. My father was already there. He was sitting in a booth by the window, but he was not looking at the view of the water. He was staring at a laminated, sauce-stained menu as if it held the answers. He looked like he had not slept. He looked smaller than I remembered. I slid into the booth opposite him. I did not say hello. I did not order. I placed my phone on the table between us. "Claire," he began, his voice a dry rustle. "Honey, this has all gone too far. This is just a terrible misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," I repeated, my voice flat. "Is that what we are calling it now?" Darlene put her hands on me. Darlene and Edna forged my signature and tried to steal my home. And you stood there and watched. Which part was the misunderstanding? Dad? "She is just under so much pressure," he burst out, his voice cracking, drawing a quick glance from a man at the counter. He lowered it to a desperate whisper. "Marla's debts. It is bad. Claire, worse than you know. She owes people. Not just the bank, Darlene. Darlene promised she could fix it. She promised she could get the loan from Clipper Bank. That she had a way. That the apartment I earned, that I paid for, was her solution. She was just trying to protect her daughter. She was trying to protect this family." I looked at this man, my father, a creature of such profound weakness that he had reframed a violent, fraudulent conspiracy as an act of protection. I unlocked my phone. I did not say a word. I opened the photo gallery. I selected the image I had taken in the coffee shop bathroom. I enlarged it, the purple and yellow bruise on my cheekbones stark and vivid under the deli's fluorescent lights. I slid the phone across the table. He flinched. He physically recoiled. squeezing his eyes shut as if the image itself was the assault. "Claire, I am so sorry. It was—" "Stress?" I offered, my voice like ice. "That is the word you used. You said she was stressed." She did not mean it. She was just upset." I tapped the screen. Switching from the photo to the audio file I had recorded on my watch, I pressed play. I did not turn the volume up high. It was just loud enough for us. First, the sound of Darlene's voice, shrill, unhinged, "Ungrateful little bitch." Then, the sound, the sickening, wet slap of her palm connecting with my face. My father stopped breathing. Then, the ringing silence, and finally, Edna's voice, not concerned, but annoyed. "Darlene, for heaven's sake, now look what you've done. Don't make a scene." I pressed stop. The ambient noise of the deli rushed back in, the clatter of plates, the sizzle of the grill. My father was pale, his hands shaking. He looked at me, his eyes wet. I was scared," he whispered. "She was so angry. I did not know what to do. I froze." "I know," I said. "You did nothing." I pulled the phone back and put it in my pocket. "Did you sign anything?" "What? No, I would never." "Did you sign anything?" I repeated. "Related to my apartment? My name? My credit? Anything Darlene put in front of you?" "No, I swear, Darlene she handles all the paperwork, Claire. She handles the taxes, the bank stuff. She said she had an old form you signed, a formality from when you were in Germany. She said it was all perfectly legal, that she was just helping. She told you that, and you believed her." It was not a question. It was a finding of fact. He had willingly, stupidly, made himself blind. "I need to show you one more thing," I said. I unzipped my bag. I did not pull out Sylvie's full file. I had prepared for this. I pulled out a single, laminated sheet of paper. On it was a simple, clean flowchart I had drawn myself. Marla's Boutique, Edna Family Fund. Northlake Holdings, LLC. Darlene Connor. I slid it across the table. "This is the map," I said. "This is what Darlene is protecting." He stared at it, his brows furrowing in confusion. "What is this? Northlake Holdings? I have never heard of that. And the Edna Family Fund? She is putting Marla's money into the fund?" "She is," I said. "And then the fund is paying Darlene's personal shell company, Northlake Holdings, for consulting fees. It is a washer. Dad, she is using your mother's trust to launder money." My father's face went from pale to ashen. The weakness I always saw was replaced by something new, a deep, profound, genuine shock. That's not possible," he whispered, shaking his head. "No, that fund, Claire, that fund is for the church. It is the St. Jude's Scholarship. Your grandmother set it up 20 years ago. For kids in the parish, it cannot be. Darlene would not. Edna would never let her." "Edna is the one signing the checks," I said. "I have the bank statements." He stared at the flowchart, the simple black lines connecting his wife and his mother in a conspiracy to embezzle a church scholarship. The narrative he had built, of a stressed-out wife trying to protect her daughter, had just been obliterated. "I am not here to ask you to choose a side," I said, my voice low. "I am not asking you to join me. I am not asking for your help. I am giving you the truth. That is it." He looked up from the paper, his eyes lost. He was a man who had built his life on avoiding the truth, and I had just locked him in a room with it. I did not know," he stammered. "The church. Oh God. Claire. What?" My phone vibrated on the table, a text message. I looked at the screen. It was from Ms. Allen, my lawyer. "Judge Hightower signed. Temporary PFA order served. Darlene Connor is prohibited from contacting you. Hearing for permanent order is set." I felt a small, cold spike of victory. The first legal wall was built. As I was reading my message, my father's phone, sitting next to the flowchart, buzzed. He picked it up, his hand shaking so badly he almost dropped it. It is a post," he said, his voice trembling. "It is from Edna. Do not watch it. She tagged me. It is a video. She is crying." He tapped the screen. I could hear the tinny, distorted audio from across the table. Edna's voice, thick with performative tears. "All we have ever done is love, and now our own granddaughter is trying to tear us apart, telling lies. We were only trying to help Marla. Just a simple family matter. She is confused. She will not even let us talk to that nice man at Clipper Bank. All we needed was the cosign papers. Just a formality." My father's hand slapped the screen, cutting her off. He looked at me. His face was a ruin. He had just heard his mother, in a public video, in an attempt to garner sympathy, confess. She had named the bank. She had admitted to the cosign papers. He, the man who had just claimed ignorance, was now staring at a flowchart of his family's criminal enterprise, a text message confirming a restraining order against his wife, and the public confession of his mother. He had run out of room to hide. He sat in silence for a full minute, staring at the salt shaker. He did not look at me. He picked up his phone. His thumbs moved, slowly, deliberately. A moment later, my own phone vibrated in my hand. A new message. From Dad. The message was one sentence. "If you need me to, I will testify." I read the words. I looked up at him. He was still staring at the salt shaker, a single tear rolling down his cheek. I did not reply to the text. I did not say thank you. I did not offer one word of comfort. I slid the flowchart back into my bag. I stood up. "It is enough," I said. I left him there, alone in the booth, and walked out of the deli into the clean, cold ocean air. I had what I came for. I had a witness. The days between the lunch at the deli and the hearing were a different kind of quiet. It was not the absence of noise. My phone was buzzing with updates from Ms. Allen, from Ethan, and from my building's security. It was the absence of chaos. My strategy was in motion. The systems I had built were working. I had moved from being a reactive target to a strategic observer. I spent most of that time on the Eastern Promenade, walking the long, wide path that overlooks the bay. The air was cold, sharp, and clean. It tasted like freedom. I watched the ferries, slow and steady, navigating the marked channel, moving from one secure point to another. I was doing the same. I thought about Edna's primary weapon, respect. For my entire life, respect had been presented to me as a one-way street. It was a toll I had to pay to my elders, to Edna, to Darlene, to my father, in exchange for, what? Their presence? Their conditional approval? Their definition of respect was surrender. It was the silencing of my own voice. It was the dissolving of my boundaries. It was me making myself small, quiet, and available so they could feel large, loud, and in control. I had been respectful. By their definition, I had been quiet when Darlene was cruel. I had been accommodating when Edna was demanding. I had been understanding when my father was weak, and in return, they had respected me so little that they believed they could steal from me, assault me, and then demand I apologize for the inconvenience. Walking that path, with the cold wind on my face, I defined my own terms. Respect, I decided, was not surrender. It was the opposite. Respect was honoring the truth. It was respecting the law. It was respecting my own boundaries enough to defend them. My actions in the last few days, the legal filings, the credit freezes, the evidence trail, had been the most profound acts of respect I had ever committed. I was respecting myself enough to say no. I was respecting the law enough to use it, and in a strange, cold way, I was respecting them enough to show them exactly where my lines were, drawn in steel and filed with the court. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I did not recognize, but the preview showed it was from a woman in my veterans network. I had, in a moment of clarity, Shared a very vague version of my legal troubles with a women's support group I met with monthly. Claire, your 3T rule saved me this week. A contractor tried to bill me for work he didn't do. I just kept my cool and said, "Let's review the trail." He backed down. "Thank you." The 3T rule. It was something I had formulated without even meaning to. A simple doctrine I had shared. Truth, the objective, verifiable facts, not the emotional narrative, not what she meant, but what she did. The photos, the audio file, the bank statements. Time, do not react in the moment. Do not engage in their time frame of chaos. Step back. Let the initial adrenaline fade. Time is a filter. It separates the emotional response from the strategic one. Trail, the evidence. Document everything, every text, every email, every voicemail, every interaction. Create a log, build the chain. Let the trail tell the story, because it cannot be gaslit. The woman's text was a simple confirmation. The principles were sound. A few minutes later, another email. This one was from the network organizer. Claire, I know you are going through a lot, but what you shared has helped so many of us. We have received an inquiry from the Maine Veterans Bureau. They are looking for someone to speak at their upcoming symposium on financial sovereignty for veterans, specifically regarding POA and identity theft protection. Your name came up. Would you be willing? I read the email. A symposium. Me, speaking, a year ago. I would have deleted it, terrified of the attention, terrified of taking up space. I thought about my old POA, the one Darlene and Edna had forged. I thought about the VA portal they had breached. I thought about how they had targeted my service, the very thing I was proudest of, and tried to turn it into a weapon against me. I typed one word, yes. I walked back to my apartment. The PFA order meant I was, for the first time in my adult life, truly alone in my own space. No fear of an ambush, no threat of a surprise visit. But I was still operating on the old framework. My locks were standard. My phone number was the same one they had been calling for 10 years. I called a locksmith, not the one Darlene had tried to hire. I called the best, most expensive security firm in Portland. By 4 p.m., my solid wood door was refitted with a high-security Medico deadbolt, a new strike plate, and a one-way security peephole. I paid for a new phone number. I spent an hour emailing it to the people who mattered. My lawyer, Ethan, Victor Hale's attorney, my boss, and my friends. I then spent the evening clearing my physical space. My desk had always been a pile of just-in-case papers, many of them related to my family. Old tax forms Darlene had helped with, medical explanation of benefits for my father. I bought a shredder. For 3 hours, I shredded the past. I shredded the old, useless tendrils of obligation. I was establishing, in the physical world, the same sovereignty I was fighting for in the legal one. My computer pinged. An alert from Ethan. He was forwarding a link to the local Portland newspaper's website. The article was not about me. It was a general interest piece, an investigative report on the hidden dangers of power of attorney abuse. It detailed how easily the forms could be exploited, especially when targeting veterans or the elderly. It cited anonymous sources at local banks, one of whom mentioned a recent sharp increase in flagged applications at Clipper Bank. The reporter did not have my name. The reporter did not have Sylvie's name, but they had the story. Darlene's Facebook posts, which were still appearing, claiming she was a victim of a confused, sick granddaughter, were suddenly being flooded with comments, not of support, but of links to this new article. Looks like POA abuse is a real thing, ma'am. This sounds a lot like what that article is talking about. Are you the one who tried to forge the papers? Her narrative was collapsing. My silence, and the power of the truth, was louder than her hysteria. I watched the screen, not with glee, not with a sense of revenge. I felt balanced. This was not a victory. This was just the scales, which had been tipped against me for 30 years, finally returning to zero. This was just the gravity of their actions finally taking effect. My new phone buzzed with a text from my old number. the one my father still had. Found it. It was in her church papers file. The original charter for the St. Jude's Scholarship, and the 2018 amendment she filed, the one changing the fund's purpose from charitable scholarship to general family support and investment. She signed it as trustee. I signed it as a witness. I didn't even read it. I'm so sorry. Claire, I am sending it to your lawyer. I will see you in court. He had found the gun, the document that proved Edna had intentionally and legally converted the scholarship fund into her own personal slush fund. She had not just lied to me. She had lied to the church, to the IRS, and to him. The final call of the day came from Edna. It was blocked, of course, but she had used a different number, and it went to my new voicemail. The message she left was stripped of all its former power. Claire, this is your grandmother. This has all been a terrible, terrible mistake, a misunderstanding. I think we should talk, privately, just you and me, at the house. We can have tea. We can fix this. Claire, just us, as a family. Call me. Her voice was thin, reedy. The authority was gone. The moral certainty had evaporated. It was the voice of a general who had lost her army and was now offering a truce, desperate to get me back to her battlefield, the one place she still had power. I deleted the voicemail. I sent a text to Ms. Allen. Edna is attempting contact. She wants a private meeting. Please advise her that I will only meet in your presence, in your office, with a court reporter present, and only to discuss the terms of her surrender. I was done. The shredder was full. My new keys were on the table. I walked to my closet and pulled out a small, locked metal box. It was where I kept the few things that had belonged to my real mother. I had not opened it in years. Inside, beneath a few photos, was a stack of letters she had sent me, the ones that Edna had forgotten to give me until I was 18. I unfolded the last one she ever wrote. Her handwriting was elegant, precise. My dearest Claire, do not let them do to you what they did to me. Do not let them convince you that your light takes away from theirs. It does not. Do not ever make yourself small so that they can feel big. Your life is your own. Shine, shine, my baby. Do not let them put you out. I folded the letter. I put it in the pocket of the suit I was going to wear tomorrow. My decision was made. This was not about a negotiation. This was not about finding common ground. This was about a conclusion. This was about the end. I set the alarm on my new phone. 5:30 a.m. Tomorrow was the hearing. The Portland District Court. Courtroom 3 is not a place for drama. It is a place of function. The lights are a harsh, buzzing fluorescent. The walls are a pale, institutional yellow. The wood of the benches is hard, scarred, and covered in a thin, sticky varnish. It is a room designed to process human failure, quickly and without ceremony. My hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. We were called at 9:17. Ms. Allen and I sat at the petitioner's table. I wore a dark gray suit, the one I kept for professional presentations. In my pocket, I could feel the crisp fold of my mother's last letter. Across the aisle, they sat, Darlene, Edna, and my father. Darlene was vibrating, her leg bouncing so hard I could hear the faint jingle of her keys. Edna sat rigid, her hands clasped on her purse, attempting to project an aura of offended dignity. My father sat between them, a man physically shrinking, his eyes fixed on his own lap. They had a lawyer, a man from a strip mall office whose suit was one size too large. The judge, a woman named Hightower, entered. She looked tired. She looked at the docket. Connor versus Connor, protection from abuse. This is the hearing for the permanent order. I have reviewed the temporary petition. I have reviewed the attached exhibits. This is not a complex case. I am giving each side 10 minutes. Petitioner, you may begin. 10 minutes. Ms. Allen, my former JAG lawyer, stood. She did not raise her voice. She did not plead. She began to build. Thank you, Your Honor. We have filed the evidence packet. but I wish to summarize the undisputed facts for the record. This is not a family dispute, as the respondent will claim. This is a documented, multi-part criminal enterprise. The strip mall lawyer half stood. Objection, Your Honor. That is inflammatory. This is a family matter. Sit down, counselor, Judge Hightower said, not looking up. I will be the judge of what is inflammatory. Your client, Ms. Darlene Connor, is she not? Yes, Your Honor. She has already been served with a separate cease and desist for libel. I have read her social media posts. Inflammatory is the least of her problems. Proceed, Miss Allen. Ms. Allen gave a curt nod. She was not assembling a case. She was loading a weapon, piece by piece, chambering each round. Fact 1, Ms. Allen said, her voice a cold, clean instrument. We submit Exhibit A, the Articles of Incorporation for Blue Boy, LLC, and the notarized quitclaim deed, filed with Cumberland County. The petitioner, Ms. Connor, has taken legal, definitive steps to secure her property from non-legal claims. Fact 2. Exhibit B, the access logs from the petitioner's Secure Veterans Affairs Benefits portal. These logs show multiple illegal logins from an IP address in Old Orchard Beach, traced to the residence of the respondent, Ms. Edna Connor. Edna let out a small gasp. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm. Fact 3. Exhibit C, the official denial letter from Clipper Bank, citing a fraudulent loan application filed by respondent Marla Connor, using a forged power of attorney from 2019, which we have proven expired 5 years ago. The forgery itself is attached. Fact 4. Exhibit D, the high-definition video from the petitioner's doorbell camera, showing the respondent Darlene Connor, accompanied by the other respondents, initiating harassment, culminating in the threats that led to the initial assault. Fact 5. Exhibit E, a second video, provided by a neighbor. This footage, from 2:30 a.m., shows the respondent Darlene Connor employing a locksmith in an illegal, failed attempt to drill out the petitioner's deadbolt. The affidavit from the locksmith, who was not bonded and was told it was a lost key lockout, is also attached. And finally, Exhibit F, the time-stamped photographs of Ms. Connor's injuries, taken 90 minutes after the assault, documenting the physical battery. Ms. Allen placed her hands on the table. Your Honor, the facts are clear. Assault, harassment, identity theft, wire fraud, attempted breaking and entering. The respondents did not just cross a line. They have engaged in a pattern of criminal behavior that necessitates this order. Thank you. She sat down. She had taken 6 of her 10 minutes. The judge looked over her glasses at the other table. Counselor, your response? The lawyer stood, shuffled his papers. Your Honor, as I said, this is a family, a grieving, stressed family. Ms. Darlene Connor, she was just trying to talk to her daughter, who she raised. She was emotional. It was a misunderstanding. Darlene suddenly stood up, pushing past him. He is right. I was upset. She is my daughter. She is telling lies about me. We were just trying to talk. This is not for a court. This is for a family. Judge, you have to tell her. That is enough. Judge Hightower's voice was a gavel. Ms. Darlene Connor, sit down, now. You do not address me directly. You are in a court of law, not your living room. Your counsel is speaking. Darlene sat, her face crimson, her chest heaving. The judge turned back to the lawyer. Counselor, I have seen the video of your client attempting to have a locksmith drill her daughter's door open in the middle of the night. That is not talking. That is a crime. Do you have any legal argument to present? The lawyer looked defeated. My client, Ms. Edna Connor, would like to speak. Fine. Edna stood. She was not the strategist now. She was the matriarch, making her last stand, cloaked in tradition. Your Honor, I am this young woman's grandmother. I took her in. I taught her. I taught her about respect, about family, in my day. We did not. We did not do this. We did not use lawyers and police. We handled our traditions. We honored our elders. This is a betrayal of that trust. I was only trying to remind her of her obligations. The judge stared at her. She took off her glasses. Ms. Connor, I will ask you a simple, legal question. What legal right did you have to Ms. Claire Connor's property? Edna blinked. It was a family asset. No, it was not. The deed proves that. What legal right did you have to her VA benefits? She is young. She does not understand finance. I was helping. That is not a legal right, the judge said, her voice dropping, growing colder. What legal right did you have to sit at your desktop computer, forge a new power of attorney, attach a 5-year-old signature page to it, and submit it to a bank? What legal tradition includes forgery? Edna's face went white. She faltered. She had no script for this. I respect. Sit down, Ms. Connor. Edna crumpled into her seat. The judge looked at me. Ms. Claire Connor, do you wish to be heard? I stood up. The room was silent. I looked at the judge. I did not look at them. I did not need to. I love my family, I said. My voice was clear. It did not shake. But my property is mine. Violence does not buy a key. 17 words. I sat down. One final matter, Judge Hightower said, looking at the file. The respondents have listed a witness, Mr. Thomas Connor. My father stood up. He did not look at Darlene. He did not look at Edna. He looked at the floor. Mr. Connor, the judge said, I have one question for you. Did you, at any time, authorize the use of your daughter's signature on a power of attorney for a bank loan? My father swallowed. No, Your Honor. And did you, on the night of November 11th, witness the assault in your home? A long, terrible silence. Darlene was staring at the side of his head, trying to set him on fire with her gaze. Yes, Your Honor, he whispered. I did. I saw her hit Claire. Thank you. Mr. Connor, you may sit. My father sat down. Edna was crying. Silent, wet tears. Darlene was staring into the middle distance, a mask of pure, white-hot rage. The judge picked up her gavel. This is not a difficult decision. The temporary order is made permanent. The respondents, Darlene Connor, Edna Connor, and Marla Connor, are hereby prohibited from contacting, harassing, intimidating, or approaching the petitioner, Ms. Claire Connor, for a period of 2 years. This includes all physical, telephonic, digital, and third-party contact. You are prohibited from defaming her on public media. You are prohibited from interfering with her property or employment. Any attempt to hire a locksmith or any other agent to approach her residence will be considered an immediate violation. This court is finished. Order granted. She struck the gavel. It was over. Ms. Allen touched my arm. Good. That is a clean, total victory. Claire. As we packed our briefcases, my lawyer's phone vibrated on the table. She looked at it. Her eyes widened, just slightly. She slid the phone over to me. It was an email from the anonymous S account, the one from Sylvie. Subject: FYI, an anonymous party just overnighted this to the court, the IRS, and the VA Office of Inspector General. Figured you should have it, too. Good luck. Attached was a single PDF. It was the complete, unredacted, multi-year bank statements for the Edna Family Fund. I looked at Ms. Allen. She looked at me. The civil case was over. The criminal case had just begun. We stood, turned, and walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was bright, busy, and blessedly empty. We were almost to the main elevators. And then I saw him. He was standing by the large, revolving doors of the courthouse entrance, as if he were waiting for a car. He was in the same dark overcoat. His silver-headed cane was resting on the marble floor. It was Victor Hale. My father, Darlene, and Edna came out of the courtroom behind us. they stopped dead. My father's face was not shock. It was a kind of hollow, ancestral terror. Darlene just looked confused, angry, but Edna looked like she had seen a ghost. Victor Hale did not move. He did not acknowledge us. He looked past us, past me, and fixed his gaze on Edna. The hallway was silent, a pocket of dead air in the middle of the bustling courthouse. He tapped his cane on the marble. Once, a sharp, echoing click. He turned his head. "Edna," he said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the entire building. "It is time to pay the silence debt." He looked at me, then at Ms. Allen. He did not smile. He simply stepped forward and pushed the revolving door. It began to turn. The climax was not a confrontation. It was an invitation. He was holding the door. Victor Hale did not look at me. He did not look at Ms. Allen. He simply held the revolving door, his gaze fixed on the 3 people frozen in the hallway behind us. "Victor." Edna's voice was not a gasp. It was a sound I had never heard from her. A dry, hollow rattle. The sound of a name that had been buried for decades. Darlene, predictably, broke the spell. "Who the hell is this guy? We are leaving. Thomas, let's go." "He is no one you know." "Darlene," my father whispered, his eyes wide, his hands trembling. "He is Victor Hale." "I do not care what his name is," Darlene snapped, but her voice was brittle. The PFA order had taken the fight out of her, and this man's presence confused her. "Ms. Allen," Victor said, his voice a low, precise baritone that commanded the marble hall. He released the door and stepped toward my lawyer, completely ignoring the others. "I am Victor Hale. I am the founder of Hale Maritime. I am also the petitioner's maternal grandfather. I believe you have just received a file, the full financials for the Edna Family Fund." Ms. Allen's eyes, usually so impassive, widened slightly. You are S?" "I am the man S works for," Victor said. "Sylvie Hart is the chief auditor for the Hale Maritime Foundation. She was embedded. We have been monitoring Ms. Edna Connor's activities ever since we discovered the original breach of the scholarship charter." He turned, and for the first time, he looked at Edna. He was not angry. He was an auditor. He was a man reviewing a failed asset. "Edna, you have been busy," he said. Edna's strip mall lawyer, who had been packing his briefcase, snapped it shut and stepped forward. "Sir, you cannot be here. This hearing is concluded. My clients—" "Your clients," Victor interrupted, his voice dropping 10 degrees, "are about to be the subjects of a federal investigation for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. I suggest you stop billing by the hour and start considering a plea. Ms. Allen." He turned back to us, and the air in the hallway became a pressurized meeting room. He was in command. "Ms. Allen, the PFA you just won is an excellent firewall, but it does not address the root of the problem. The root is the money." He produced a slim leather briefcase. He did not open it. He just rested one hand on it. "Here is the situation," Victor said, and I realized he was speaking for my benefit, for my lawyer's benefit, and for the benefit of the 3 people who were now his prisoners. When my daughter, Claire's mother, was exiled by this family, I stepped away. It was a mistake, but I left one thing behind: the St. Jude's Scholarship Fund. I was the anonymous initial donor. The charter, which I wrote, was specific. It was for scholarships. Only, my father made a small, choking sound. "As Ms. Hart's data has shown," Victor continued, "and as you now have in your possession, Ms. Edna Connor, the trustee, illegally amended the fund's purpose in 2018, turning it into a general family support trust. She did this, we have found, by forging the signature of the co-trustee, the pastor of St. Jude's, who has been dead for 4 years." Edna's hand flew to her mouth. "She then," Victor said, his voice relentless, "began to use that fund as a private bank, but she got sloppy. Her daughter-in-law, Ms. Darlene Connor, got greedy. He looked at Darlene. You created a shell corporation, Northlake Holdings LLC, a consulting firm. Darlene just stared, her face pale and slack. The money trail is beautifully simple, in its own pathetic way, Victor said. Marla's failing boutique would take cash, from where, we are still investigating, and deposit it into the Edna Family Fund. Claiming it was revenue, Ms. Edna Connor would then transfer that money, minus a small percentage, directly to Darlene's Northlake Holdings LLC for consulting services. It is soft money laundering, hiding illicit income inside a supposedly charitable trust. But then, you needed the big score, the loan from Clipper Bank. He finally looked at me. They did not just want your apartment, Claire. They wanted your credit. They wanted a clean name, a VA loan, a secure asset, to leverage against the money they were washing. Your home was not the target. It was the collateral for the next, larger phase of their fraud. You are not family, Darlene finally screamed it, her voice echoing in the hall. It was her only defense. You are not. You were not here. I was here. I raised her. I did everything. You are correct, madam, Victor said, unruffled. I was not here, but my lawyers are here now. The Hale Maritime Foundation has an entire division dedicated to financial crimes. I am, in this moment, offering you a choice, and I'm offering it only because my granddaughter, he gestured to me, is in this hallway. He turned to Ms. Allen. My foundation is prepared, as of this morning, to file a full civil suit against Darlene, Edna, and Marla Connor for fraud, embezzlement, and damages. We will also be submitting our full findings to the IRS and the district attorney. We will seize that desktop computer. We will depose Marla. We will subpoena Clipper Bank. We will, in short, dismantle this entire family piece by piece. Or, he said, we can find another way. All eyes turned to me. I looked at Darlene, who was trembling with a rage that had nowhere to go. I looked at my father, who was weeping silently, and I looked at Edna. She was staring at Victor. Her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. The matriarch, the strategist, the woman who had traded my mother for her social standing and my future for her financial security. This was my decision. I had the PFA. I had my home. Secured under Blue Boy LLC, I had my identity back. Victor was offering me a public, brutal execution. I did not want it. I do not want them in prison, I said. The words dropped into the silence. Victor raised an eyebrow. Claire? I said, I repeated, my voice stronger. I do not want a criminal prosecution. I do not want a trial. I want a firewall. I want it over. I want a boundary so clear, so final, that this can never, ever happen again. I looked at Edna. And I want the money returned. What money? Edna stammered. The scholarship fund, Edna, I said. The money you stole. I want it all put back. Ms. Allen, who had been listening intently, stepped forward. I believe, Your Honor, she said, briefly forgetting she was in the hall, that we can execute a stipulated order, a settlement, right now. Excellent, Victor said, a hint of approval in his voice. Here are the terms, I said, and I was no longer the petitioner. I was the managing member of my own life. 1. You, Darlene, Edna, and Marla will sign a permanent retraction of any and all claims, financial or otherwise, to my property, my assets, or my VA benefits. You will acknowledge that Blue Boy LLC is my sole property. 2, I continued, looking at Darlene, you will post a public retraction and apology on all social media for the libelous statements you made about me. Ms. Allen will draft it. You will post it, verbatim, by 5 p.m. today. 3. Edna, you will liquidate whatever assets are necessary to replenish the St. Jude's Scholarship Fund to its original, inflation-adjusted value. The Hale Maritime Foundation. I glanced at Victor. We'll audit the transfer. And in exchange for these three things, I concluded, I will not press for criminal charges. I will not pursue punitive damages. It was done. I had laid it all out. Darlene looked ready to explode. You cannot. We will not. And one final component, Victor Hale said, stepping forward, his voice a block of ice. My granddaughter is merciful. I am not. If any one of you, at any time, for the rest of your natural lives, violates the PFA or the terms of this agreement, if you so much as think about her name in a financial context, the Hale Maritime Foundation will not just pursue you, we will finance a class action lawsuit on behalf of every single student who was denied a scholarship from that fund for the past 7 years. We will take your house. We will take your car. We will take every penny you have laundered. This is not a threat. It is a financial guarantee. The hallway was a tomb. Ms. Allen pulled a legal pad from her briefcase. I will draft the stipulation, she said. She sat on the hard wooden bench. She wrote for 5 minutes, her pen flying. When she was done, she stood. A stipulated order. It outlines all terms. It is a permanent, binding court order, incorporating the PFA. All we need are the signatures, and for Judge Hightower to so order it. She handed the pad to my father. Mr. Connor, as a witness. He took the pen, his hand shaking, and signed. She handed it to Edna. Edna looked at the paper. She looked at Victor. She looked at me. Her hand, the one that had held the family in a fist, was trembling so hard she could barely hold the pen. She signed, her signature a jagged, broken line. She handed it to Darlene. Darlene snatched the pen. You will regret this, she hissed at me. She signed, stabbing the paper. I do not think I will, I said. Ms. Allen took the pad. I will be right back. I will have the judge sign this. She disappeared back into the courtroom. We waited, the 5 of us. In the silent hallway, my father, Darlene, and Edna were a broken, defeated unit. I was a sovereign nation, and Victor Hale was my ally. Ms. Allen returned, a fresh copy from the clerk's printer in her hand, bearing the judge's signature. It is done, filed, sealed. The assets of Blue Boy LLC are untouchable. The harassment order is permanent. The fund restoration is now a court order. Darlene, Edna, and my father fled. They did not walk. They fled, practically running for the elevators, a defeated army. I stood in the hall with Victor and Ms. Allen. Well, Ms. Allen said, a rare, thin smile on her face. That was the most efficient post-hearing settlement I have ever been a part of. Ms. Connor, Mr. Hale, she nodded to us, the consummate professional, and walked away. I was left alone with my grandfather. He was quiet for a moment, just watching the elevator doors close. He turned to me. Your mother, he said, his voice softer, was like that. She was all light, until they tried to put her in a box. You are different. You are light, but you are also the box. You built your own walls. Victor, I said, why now? Why after all this time? He looked at me, his eyes clear and sharp, the same color as the ocean. I respected my daughter's choice to leave. I did not respect the silence that followed. I owed her that. But your file, Claire, the VA breach, the POA, you did not just call for help. You built a case. You were not a victim asking for a rescue. You were a general asking for an ally. So I came. He gestured to the main doors. Walk with me. We walked, side by side, his cane tapping a slow, steady rhythm on the marble. We pushed through the heavy revolving doors and stepped out onto the courthouse plaza. The wind hit us, a sudden, sharp, glorious blast of cold air from the harbor. It whipped my hair across my face, and it smelled of salt and rain and freedom. I looked at my grandfather, this stranger who was more family than anyone I had ever known. Edna, I said, was always demanding respect. She never understood it. Victor Hale stopped at the top of the steps, looking out over the city. She, And those like her never do, he said. They think respect is obedience. It is not true respect. Claire is never asking someone to erase themselves to make you comfortable. He held out his hand, not as a grandfather, as a partner. I took it. His grip was firm, strong, and steady. Across the city, a church bell began to ring, a clear single note, tolling the noon hour. The sound cut through the wind. The knot was undone. Thank you for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please comment below and share your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.